Hey, what's up, YouTube? This is Cardboard Coach Neil. It is Friday, the Friday before Labor Day. Hopefully, we all have some good stuff in store. Hopefully, even more importantly, that we're all off on Monday and take some time to do some fun activities with the family or friends or both, and maybe even a little bit of hobby in there, right? I think some card shops are open, so might be something worthwhile to look into. I have a card show on Sunday at the Delaware Show, and I'm going to be setting up. Hope to see some people down there. I know the regulars will be down there. I'm not bringing anything of any, huge value, just odds and ends, and stuff I generally will bring to the show. But I figured I'd do a quick video because I saw some good ones over the past 2-3 days. Most notably, Brad's Vintage Collection put out a real quick video. Hopefully this one is just as quick. And it was good. It was just, positive, just food for thought type of questions. Makes you kind of think about it. It's a good channel. I'm going to put that description in the links if you haven't seen it. But a guy that I think a lot of my subscribers subscribe to as well was Tony Talks Cards. He did a video response to that, but took it a little bit different, created 3 different questions. And I'm going to do a video response to those questions. If I recall correctly, the first one was, how do you prefer to buy cards? And that one was pretty easy for me. As a matter of fact, both the first 2 were pretty easy. But the first question was, how do you prefer to buy cards? And it was, eBay, at your card shop, maybe social media, or a card show. And that is absolutely my favorite way to buy a card. And I'm going to tell you why. The instant gratification is huge. You get to inspect the card. You get to go home with that card. Chances are you're avoiding any taxes. I live in a tax-free state, so I never have to worry about that stuff. And most of the times when I go to the Philly show, taxes are just kind of incorporated, I guess, into the cost. But seeing the card in hand and being able to inspect the centering and the color and the corners and this and that, it's just fun. Sometimes I never go into a card show with a list. I kind of go in just to kind of see what happens. And when I do buy something, it's always fun. That's my absolute favorite way to buy cards. I don't even mind, I should say, paying a little bit extra because dealers are taking their time to set up, and there's a lot of costs involved in just setting up. There's the show expense, there's travel, there's lodging, the list goes on and on. Without dealers, we're not going to have shows, and without shows, we're not going to be as happy as we are, right? So buying at shows is my favorite way, no question. Favorite way to sell, or I guess preferred way to sell, and I've done this, and I just talked about what I am doing on Sunday. I do set up at a show on a somewhat regular basis. A buddy and me set up a split a table. And it's local, it's small, it's fun. I get to see some people in there and, they get to ask questions. I get to answer them, and I get to sometimes, with the few vintage dealers that are there, they have new stuff. Sometimes we make trades. It's fun. It doesn't always work because at shows you deal with a lot of people that want major bargains, which, I'm just not ready to give it because I'm not in a situation where I have to sell. I just kind of like to do it to keep things fresh and also to have an excuse to go to a card show. So my preferred way to sell is eBay. I don't sell on eBay myself. I sell through 4 Sharp Corners and through Greg Morris. They get the most eyes. And their consignment rates are pretty good, actually. I would highly encourage anyone. Auction style formats always kind of get the juices going. no one likes being outbid, especially if it's a card you want and you kind of have your snipe set up and this and that. The other thing is the other type of auction format is through actual auction houses. And I use two. I've used a few, but the two that I go to most often are Sterling Sports Cards and REA. REA, if I'm selling a couple of bigger items that just no longer fit into the collection, and Sterling for kind of that everyday stuff that I collect that, just isn't too expensive. It's cool. You kind of want to start a new focus, and Sterling Sports Auctions is a good way to do it too. And there's, the consignment fees for sellers are 0%. So whatever it sells for, you're going to get now. So those are my preferred ways to sell. But the reason for the video was, and those were two good questions, but it was the third question that kind of made me think. And if I recall correctly, Tony, it was, we're going back in time to the age when we started collecting and having a conversation with ourself at age 10. I'll use age 10. It sounds better. So if I were going to go back and have a conversation and show my collection, I think that was the important part. Show my collection to my 10-year-old self. What would my 10-year-old self think? Well, there are two things. First, at age 10, I'd be very happy that I got two of these many cards I wanted at age 10. And I have more than two, but I'm going to show two just because they're kind of cool stories. The other one was, wow, you're collecting some big cards. And by big, I mean oversized. So when I was 10 years old, 9-pocket sheets were not really a thing. My LCS, which was Joe's Dugout at the time, didn't carry that kind of stuff. So we relied on shoe boxes, and if we're lucky, we found a cigar box, just to kind of keep our cards in, but it was mostly shoe boxes. I had access to 9-pocket sheets, maybe a few years later in the earlier 80s. But 1980, it was a shoebox. That's kind of what it was. And we keep our cards as clean as possible. But when it came to bigger stuff, it was different. I didn't know. To me, it was too big. But I have embraced the oversized over the years. I've shown some on some of the content I put out. I'm going to show just two more, just for example. And I don't think I've shown these. This is, people have, it's not common. I mean, it's not uncommon, I should say, and very affordable. This is Earl Averill's 1936 R311. This is the glossy version. But my 10-year-old self would never have wanted one of these because top loaders were not a thing. I don't think oversized top loaders, I don't know when they came out, but I mean, I kind of knew about these maybe in the past 20 years, maybe a little bit longer, but I got all sizes now. I have a bunch of 11 by 14s. I have a bunch of 8 by 10s. I'll show this in a second. On down to the line to just standard size. But the other thing that's cool is just, some cool stuff. This isn't really even a card. It's a stadium giveaway from Mel Ott Night. So, it's just something that's just cool. Like my 10-year-old self would not have appreciated this. Now, I always liked vintage players, and that was the influence from my dad and my grandparents, most notably on my mom's side. I've talked about Pop Pop before. Pop Pop talked about players all the time. He was a big A's fan, loved the Phillies as well, but he was a huge A's fan. And I'm going to do a Philadelphia Athletics channel, or not channel, but video at some point, just to show stuff from the Philadelphia Athletics. But as a kid, I'm going to start off with this one. So I mentioned that we didn't have binders and 9-pocket sheets and that kind of stuff, even like the top loaders I just talked about. It wasn't until like 81, 82 that I discovered price guides, like a monthly one. Now, my cousin, he had a Beckett annual. Now, the Beckett's came out once a year, and they were like a, kind of thick, book. You just kind of look through, it just had pricing, many, many different sets up through the present year. But I remember, I think it was probably the 1980 Beckett, they had color inserts in the middle. And I saw a card that I loved. He was just inducted, or he was announced in 1980 that he was going into the Hall of Fame. And that's Duke Snider. I've had this card for a very, very long time. Got it graded by SGC back in the day. And a few years back, I cracked it out and sent it to PSA. Why? I don't know. I guess I just like to waste money sometimes. But this is one of my favorite cards of all time. And I think Mike actually may have shown this before. Or maybe another Duke Snider. I think he's a Duke Snider guy. But this is one of my favorite cards. So I would tell my 10-year-old self, hey, remember that card we saw in the Beckett annual? That Duke Snider? We got one. The other one, and there are two, I always wanted as a kid. My same cousin talked about Goodies. Now we found out they're pronounced Goudies. I found that out many, many years ago, but we didn't know how to pronounce it as a kid. And I liked Babe Ruth. My pop-pop talked about him all the time. I have a 1932 Yankees team signed ball with Ruth on the sweet spot. Ruth has always been my guy. Never thought I'd own one as a 10-year-old kid, but now I have two. And that's the yellow and the red. I once had the green without this one. The green is one of my favorites. I would probably trade this red to get a green. But I couldn't buy a green because if I did, I'd have to get the batting pose as well. That's just kind of how I am. If I had three, I'd have to have all four. And that would, I'd have to sell some good stuff. The other card I always wanted as a 10-year-old, I don't have. That's a 52 Topps Mantle. But I did want Mantle cards, and I'll show them at some other point. But that's what I would tell my 10-year-old self. Hey, we got that Duke Snider. We got that Babe Ruth. And that was a good question from Tony. I appreciate that. Hopefully you guys will check out those two channels I just talked about and just look at the questions. It's just, fun stuff, right? We're having fun in the hobby. There's no reason not to. We don't have to collect. We choose to do so for a reason. So if that reason is whatever, anything but fun, you may want to rethink that. I don't know where I'm going with the rest. I could ramble all day long. I'm going to not do it. I'm going to leave it with here. Have a good Labor Day weekend, and you guys take care.